Hey friends, before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to tell you about our collective's newest partner. Meet Contact Monkey. Employee engagement is at the forefront of organizational strategy now more than ever. Internal comms needs to step up and be the backbone of company culture as organizations adapt to a new way of work. Contact Monkey is the ideal solution to streamline your internal communications all from within your Outlook or Gmail inbox. With Contact Monkey, you can create beautiful email newsletters using a wide range of customizable email templates. Drive employee engagement by including pulse surveys, employee net promoter score, and anonymous comments to enable a two-way conversation with your employees. And send employee emails directly from your inbox to existing distribution list. Contact Monkey does all the hard work, so you can sit back and watch your employee insights pour into your Contact Monkey dashboard in real time. To try Contact Monkey's free demo, visit www.contactmonkey.com/ICPro. I'm Sarah Jackson. Welcome to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. This season, we're closing the gap. I've tracked down the experts that can help us as internal communicators close the gap from where we are now to where we need to be. We're connecting the dots to drive value and lead from the inside out.
And so how can we have mindsets of being the disruptors? How can we be innovative? How can we transform banking and reimagine it? We can be innovative. We can transform communications. We can reimagine it. We can try things differently.
That's Calvin Seaman, Managing Director of Internal Communications at ATB Financial, an expert who is disrupting the internal comms space within the banking industry. Welcome back to part 2 of our series, where we're talking about the optimal IC department structure that drives value. Today, we continue our conversation with Calvin as he warns us of the barrier to future success. Additionally, we'll talk about the following 3 key tips. The number 1 thing you should be making a business case for. Also, how to free up your time to focus on the right work. And Calvin reveals the secret piece to his strategy cycle. So we kick off part 2 of my conversation with Calvin by discussing the F word. It sounds, again, like, ponies and roses here in ATB land, but there has to be some, with any success comes so many learnings, which is, I think, another word for failures. And people are, afraid of that word, but it's really how we learn. Can you tell us a story of a failure that you had and wow, this is what we really learned from this that gave you some of your greatest insights to sort of leapfrog you to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. Now, I won't say the F word, but which is failure. No, we did a little campaign for that for a bit once, which was like embracing the F word, which was failure, not the actual explicit F word, which was fun. I would say when I bring that up because as we look through that, we often think of failure as you launch something and it stink and you shouldn't have, right? Like that finished product. But we did talk a lot about failure as along the way pieces that make the end product better. So I would say the one that really shifted my mind and changed the most could have been a failure for sure if I hadn't along the way, but was our launch of the G Suite. And we, as an organization, invested heavily in that one. So it was really well resourced. We had talked to other organizations about what went wrong when they implemented the G Suite and a lack of adoption. So we did a lot. But part of that project, and here's where the investment came, is we took a bunch of people to Google in California, and we went to Singularity University. And one of the speakers at Singularity University said something to me that resonates with me today, and was one of my biggest learnings was your past success can be your biggest barrier to future success. And I think as a communicator and as a strategist, it's so easy to be like, yeah, this worked before, so we're doing it again. Like, no, like what you're suggesting, no, I know what's worked. And so when you have that mindset, I think, you're going to continue to be somewhat successful, but you're just missing out on so many more opportunities to be more innovative, think of different ways of doing it. And I for sure was in that mindset of like, I have tried and true communication strategies that are going to work for this. And, as people would challenge you to think differently, that kind of statement really stuck with me to think, yeah, we could be doing this a different way, or at least be open to listening to different approaches. And that project for sure, we tried some really innovative things. And I probably initially would have been like, nope, not worth the investment of time, not going to work. The audience is going to like it. I know it's worked in the past. And that for sure would have been a barrier to that project being so successful.
Mm-hmm. I feel the added pressure on internal comms folks. If they've been thrust into, I think, a spotlight because of COVID, and now
Mhm.
everyone's watching them. Whether you had a seat at the table or not, you've been thrust into the seat at the table. What kinds of things should they definitely make sure that they are thinking about or have in their back pocket to be innovative and to move forward?
I think making a business case, obviously, right? Especially, it's going to be so different in every organization, right? And a bank is typically run by salespeople, and an oil company is run by engineers. Like, you got to know your audience too when you're trying to make a case for things, and for sure, knowing where you're at and what that looks like for you is huge. But in each of the cases, we've kind of made a bit of a business case on why we should bring people together and how you could be more efficient, right? Um, why you could invest in certain technology and how that will help. And for the people that are running the business and spending the budgets, that's a big piece of it.
Mm-hmm. So when internal communicators are thinking about, the rest of this year and heading into 2021, what resources should they be looking to invest in? How do they get those resources? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for us, obviously we have people. If you can make a business case for people, more people is always going to help. But then sometimes that's not the case, right? But speaking the language of an organization, uh, and the value it would add by having a larger team, perhaps even looking for those places where you could pull in FTE and people that are doing comms, I think that's huge. Like, until we had them together, we never even had the time to sit and think about what that future could look like. What could we be doing differently? Because as you mentioned earlier, when you're that solo communicator or the team of 3 or 4 in an organization, 4 or 5 times the size of ours, you just don't have capacity to do it, right? So I think people can sometimes equate to time for you to do that. Another one we did that I would recommend is making that business case for technology. And we've had 2 major shifts in technology. So I think we had to get off of our SharePoint intranet because we moved from Microsoft to Google. And so we had to look at what can our new quote unquote intranet look like. And we definitely took a broader look at that. And we just wanted to take away, I had people working on, what's the word? They would spend their time curating information for audiences, because with 21 people, you have prolific writers, right? We have we are prolific rather. We have a large amount of content that comes out. And so then we had people, we kind of shotgun it out on our old SharePoint intranet, and then people kind of curating it, creating newsletters. And that was kind of meaningless work to me, right? Like, you want people creating strategy, creating work. So we did 2 things there. One, we went to a more digital workplace that integrated an intranet and integrated the G Suite. And we're very early days on that. It launched just before COVID hit, which was amazing because SharePoint wasn't super mobile friendly. And when you were to the network, it was not very friendly at all. So this was great timing, but it also allowed us to segment by audience a lot easier. And then the other one was we did go within Circle to create those automated newsletters versus us spending time. I bet you we had 3 different people creating customized newsletters every week or bi-weekly for various audiences. So I don't know, I would look at time sucks and where can you invest in technology versus people to free up your time to focus on the right work.
That's a good tip. What can we automate? Okay, real quick here, I want to pause and shine a light on the product Calvin just mentioned. I know a lot of our IC pros feel stuck in a never ending list of tactical work. With Circle Broadcast, you can simplify your content creation and distribution with one-click publishing. So instead of having to check 8 boxes every time a piece of content goes out, with one click, you can send your comms to every channel. Broadcast helps their internal communicators save around 40 hours a month, letting them focus on more high-impact projects and getting them closer to the leadership table. If you think a more holistic IC solution fits your team's vision, visit circle.com/ICP. That's CERKL/ICP. One more real quick thing. Hey, thanks to our listeners who've taken the time to rate and review our podcast. These reviews help us iterate. It's part of the reason why we shortened this season's episode to be more bite-sized. Help our new listeners find us by leaving a rating and a review today. As we wrap up our conversation, Calvin's award-winning department ends us on a high note as he reveals the key part to his strategy cycle, which we'll lay out in our free resource guide that accompanies this episode. You can download it for free at internalcommspro.com/show notes. We also get insight into the key phrase Calvin's team uses to help them pivot and disrupt internal comms along the way. Let's jump back in. If you had unlimited resources, I mean, I know you already have a lot at ATB, but what are you thinking about and excited about? Where are you going to take your team in internal comms for, next 12, 18 months? What are you looking at?
Yeah, and a lot of my team will hate me saying this because I'm sure they're, always at capacity, but I feel in a lot of ways we do have, I know not unlimited, but a huge amount of resources, and we've been able to work as a team on what that future could look like. So I think, we're at a point, not necessarily of dreaming up the next thing or what we would be doing next, but really trying to work on what we've started, make it better. If we could get audiences using our channels like we are hoping, right? There's a learning curve in that and a change curve. So, like I said, we're just a few months into launching a new digital platform. Um, yeah, I think we just want to make our model sing. We've started getting feedback from our team on where is it working, not working, how can we do it better, and just want to make that part sing so that um, we're still achieving those goals of focusing on the right work, having the right level, working on the right type of work.
Well, and it's an amazing culture, which I think it's another reason why I wanted to have you on the show, because a lot of our listeners, they want to close this gap. They want to get to where you are. And so that's why I'm trying to pull out, in this conversation, what some of the things that they should be thinking about. So when you're talking about these things, like find out where the time sucks are, find out, make sure you have a business case, know the business acumen. It's just good to, and we're going to be putting all of these things, in a resource guide, that kind of a show notes where people can, absorb this and let it simmer. But the other reason is you've been in this over a decade now. And so I think to look back, if you could go back and share some of the greatest insights with your younger self, what would you, warn your younger self, or what do you wish you would have known, that now?
Yeah, and actually, in this one, I will add on to the one you were just talking about that we are going to focus on more. Although we've done it individual projects, measurement. If you can show, like, if you can demonstrate through measurement the value you're adding, then that obviously is going to help your business case. And so we have often been good at output measurement. So how many clicks did someone get? Great. But if you can measure how your communications really help shift behavior, understanding, sentiment towards something, um, that's huge, right? Like that's the last part almost of that strategic cycle. And so when I think of my younger self, and I shared a bit earlier that I was so tactical I was like so focused on innovative, cool tactics. Let's do this, almost like my clients are, right? Like they want to have some buzz and fun. Um, and again, I thought it was so boring when they're like, you gotta demonstrate the business need, that you understand the business needs, deliver on the business needs, solve for the business need. It sounded so boring, but honestly, it's been so much more rewarding since that shift of really helping them achieve what they want to do. It can still be fun at the tactical part. You can definitely do both, but if you can understand what they're trying to achieve, why we're doing it, and then have some fun doing it, and then really be able to measure that you guys succeeded on it. And internal comms, again, sometimes that's easy. We do, we don't, sometimes we do a traditional survey. Sometimes we can see how much a product's been used or a system's been used, so we can see adoption of it. Sometimes we do fun quizzes to understand people's understanding of it. But if you can kind of do that end to end strategy part, you can have lots of fun in the middle, and it's very rewarding to know the value you've added as a team, as an individual to an organization.
Well, and particularly when if the measurement, this is something that we always, try to teach. I think it's a paradigm shift. If you can connect that measurement to behavior, then behavior is connected to, in most cases, time of the employee, time
Yeah.
saved, or I don't have to spend this time doing this. And then if you can get that time amount, now you're really talking dollars that you can calculate. If we know the average wage of the employee is X, and we have now saved them 2 minutes, in
Yep.
finding whatever they like. I feel like there's always these huge value added wins that internal communicators do not take that credit for. So, um, I
Yeah.
think to get that tied to behavior and to get it tied to a dollar figure, have you started to connect things in terms of is that how you speak in terms of dollars when you're talking about value? Tell me a little bit about how you communicate that.
Yeah, we definitely, on that one specifically, we did go to that time one and the waste of time trying to find information when we were making a case to go to software as a service for a new digital workplace. We had done a communications audit. We knew anecdotally, and we took a low estimate on how much extra time people spend a day trying to find information. And how our systems were a bit fragmented and what lived where in the search. And like, we definitely use numbers in that case to kind of show like, here's where we need to make an investment to make it better. Uh, and then I would say we don't feel the need to always equate it to the dollar on the other ones. If we can say, here's what you told us you needed people to do, here's what we needed them to think, feel, and do, and we can measure that at the end and say, like, look at the comms, how like we can now see through our measurement that the comms really did get people, 95% of people were thinking this and feeling this, and then we could see through activity that they were doing this, then we can demonstrate the value we've added there, and we don't feel a need to say like that saved you $33,000 or whatever. People are super pumped just to see that here's what we set out to do and we did it, or not. Like if you can say here's what we set out to do and you measure along the way and be like, look, at people aren't understanding this, they aren't doing this, they aren't. We talk about connect, inform, inspire within our team. So if they're not informed, if they're not inspired, then how can you pivot along the way? But if you don't have that understanding of what you're trying to achieve early on, then you're going to get somewhere, but it might not be anywhere that adds value, right?
But how do you create an environment where you can pivot and you can admit, hey, yeah, we screwed up? I get the sense sometimes from our listeners that they're in environments where they don't feel like they can make messes and try and really get into the messiness of innovation. And so how did you get there, though, to be able to have the freedom to think and create and be strategic and to admit that you screwed up without getting resources taken away or reprimanded? Like, how did you get from point A to point B?
I mean, we are really, it's part an organizational cultural piece, right? And so in some cases, some listeners might have the ability to influence that, and in some cases, or be in an environment that's like that, and in others, they'll never be in that environment. And maybe if I was not in an organization that allowed it, I would have left and looked for one that did. But I was
Mhm.
very fortunate to be in an organization that wanted to disrupt versus being disrupted as an industry, right? Banking is ripe for disruption. And so, how can we have mindsets of being the disruptors? How can we be innovative? How can we transform banking and reimagine it? And so, that was the environment that they were trying to create across the organization. So, you can imagine as a communicator, then, yeah, we can be innovative. We can transform communications. We can reimagine it. We can try things differently. And I joke about that F word one around failure, but that was part of it because it's hard for people to feel comfortable enough to fail. And again, I think, framing it around those pivot points. And sometimes I would get frustrated that people say, let's say pivot instead of fail. And I'm like, well, because it's a safer word, right? You've
Mhm.
But it really is like that's where you're learning. You don't have to, it's not like you close your eyes and wait 6 months and then be like, oh crap, that was a complete failure. You look along the way, and are there ways you can get leading indicators that your comms aren't working and you can pivot? Are there ways that, and so those are mini failures. And I think that's where it's like, yeah, we tried this, it's not working. Let's try this. And why wasn't it working kind of thing, as opposed to, you know, a massive one and you have to try to undo it. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but we were very fortunate that our culture has been one of innovation and transformation and thinking of doing things in a whole different way, and we've taken advantage of that and done that ourselves, right?
So, last question, before we get to where people can connect with you. So, I love talking high level and strategic. What is one or two things I can do right now to get me from where I am now to just one step closer to being innovative and being like Calvin and being like ATB? So, if I am fortunate enough to be in a company, particularly, I think maybe even companies now have been forced into innovative thinking
Yeah,
because of the pandemic, right?
yeah.
And to mess up is more acceptable because now they've had to move more quickly. So it feels like the atmosphere sort of like this perfect storm for internal communicators to say, all right, we have got the stars aligning to be able to create an environment of innovation. Is there, one or two quick tips or things that they can do to apply now as they're starting down the road to innovate and to measure and to take their team to the next level that you would advise them to do? Like, where should they start?
I was jokingly going to say you could create a vision board, which is what we kind of did as an organization. So, although we are in an innovative company, we had teams all throughout the organization, well respected. When we came together, we really did create a vision of what does that look like. So if the stars are aligning, or you want to help make the stars align, really understanding what would that look like in 3 years. Um, and if you're the only communicator, I guess you do it on your own and really have that sense and ask yourself, um, what are the barriers for us to get there? And so we sat down and looked at, like, here's what we want to be. Here's what it looks like in, 5 years or so, 3 or 5 years. And then what are the barriers to get there? And, admittedly, a lot of those barriers we created ourselves. So it was for us to fix, right? So when we were segmented, we were training our audience to engage with communications a certain way. And so how could we look at that differently and do it more holistically as an organization? If there's people across your organization doing different types of communications but aren't on the quote unquote comms team, I'd make a case to bring those people together. The more aligned you are there, the more resources you have to focus on the right work. That's huge too. And then make a business case for investment, like you talked about earlier. Like, you're going to add value, you're going to add monetary savings over time. Like, take some time, make a business case. The worst you're going to do is get told no or not now. Um, but yeah, if you can, even add another person and keep showing your value, uh, hopefully they'll keep investing in you.
Yeah. Well, I think to for you to take the time and to break some of these things down, to share maybe some new things people haven't thought about, or to remind folks like, yeah, I do need to kind of go back, and create that vision board so that there's a starting point of how to have that conversation and to take charge and be that leader, I think has just been so key, and add so much value, for our listeners as well. So if folks wanted to connect with you online and dig in a little bit deeper to some things that you might have said, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would start with LinkedIn, probably is the easiest way.
Okay.
Send me a connection request, and then you can either send me a message through there, or we can connect virtually in another way.
Well, I again can't thank you enough for being on the show today. And I look forward to more awards. I'm sure you guys are going to try to go for 3 years in a row. I'm hearing. Is that
Well,
right?
yeah, we are. Let's make it 5, right? I'll put it on the vision board.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks so much, Calvin, for joining us.
Thank you.
So there you have it, folks. Concrete steps you can take to close the gap on structuring the optimal IC department and tips on how to connect the dots to disrupt your own internal comms efforts. And yes, of course, all these insights have been drafted into a beautiful resource guide that you can download for free at internalcommspro.com/show notes. Stay with us, friends, as our journey to closing the gap continues next week.
Internal Comms Pro podcast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our theme music is Big Vision by Purple Planet Music. Don't forget to visit www.internalcommspro.com/show notes for our free resource guides. Thank you for listening.